Ooh, there's a secret to get anyone to fall in love with you. Stick around, find out more. Live, trance, and prosper. Hi, I'm Dr. David Phillips, and welcome to How to Get Anyone to Fall in Love with You. The title of this particular video is taken from a whole slew of newspaper, magazine, television articles, feature stories about a study that seems to, according to the media, teach you how to get anyone to fall in love with you. Well, hello pie. Let's put pie in the sky, because that's not exactly what the study was on. The paper by Arthur Aron, Edward Melanot, Elaine Aron, Robert Vallone, and Renee Bator, from 1997. It was published. It was actually, the study was finished earlier, and the first draft is from 95 or so. But the publication of the study has the title, The Experimental Generation of Interpersonal Closeness, a Procedure and Some Preliminary Findings. Essentially, they wanted to look at intimacy and intimacy building. Now, many of you know, since I teach stuff related to intimacy, I'm very interested in intimacy enhancement procedures, particularly how they can be used within the context of trance work. Now, this study essentially looked at some techniques that were designed to engage people with one another and increase intimacy. Now, intimacy can be falling in love with me, or it can be, hey, let's be friends. One of the principles they looked at was the idea of self-disclosure. Study after study has shown that when people self-disclose intimate details about one another or about themselves to another, that other person tends to respond with feelings of protectiveness and intimacy. Essentially, I tell you my secrets and you feel closer to me because I have confided in you. Actually, I was exposed to this long, long ago when dinosaurs walked the earth, and I was a freshman at the University of Kansas in Lawrence, Kansas. I'm a Kansas boy. Look out, a tornado! But I was majoring, my first major at KU was theater. And I went to an acting class, and my first acting class, essentially, we all sat in a circle. The instructor told us, it was a carpeted room, and we sat in a circle, and the instructor told us on our first day of class to tell a secret about ourselves to the group. Now, he was working on ensemble building and closeness acceleration, feeling of intimacy within the group. You can accelerate that by having everyone do that essential exercise of sharing and self-disclosure. Now, I'm from a small town in Kansas, and we don't tell our secrets to strangers, say, and I felt incredibly uncomfortable. Yes, once this incredibly sharing, wonderful, incredibly handsome human being was a little uncomfortable with people telling me their deep, dark secrets in a group. And I certainly wasn't comfortable with the idea of me sharing my secrets with these total strangers at that time. And people did. They told secrets, and it did change our perception. Unfortunately for that particular exercise, it did backfire insofar as I was concerned. I didn't feel closer to all of my classmates. I felt closer to some, I really did. but some of them I felt less than close to, partly because of the secrets they chose to self-disclose were inappropriate for me to hear at that time. On the first meeting with a group, if you tell me that you are a convicted thief or that you raped someone, I'm gonna feel uncomfortable. And I was. Within 2 weeks, I dropped the class and eventually dropped that university and went to a university which I love, and my alma mater is an absolutely wonderful university, Kansas Wesleyan University, where I did indeed major in theater, speech and communication, and had a wonderful experience and had acting training that was more appropriate to my needs and interests and skill levels. Seriously. Alrighty, so let's move on from that little happy anecdote. Sometimes sharing is oversharing, and I believe I have done that. So let's move on to the concepts that Aaron and the others were looking at, and that was the idea of self-disclosure. But it's not just random self-disclosure. There are certain topics that are more readily to gaining actual intimacy, not random secrets or random stories such as what my classmates back in the day of the dinosaur were giving, but actually segmented questions that fit certain functions. And so Aaron and colleagues looked through various question types to get folks to disclose information to one another that were designed to tell us the truth and tell us facts about ourselves, but also to enhance the likelihood of feelings of intimacy. Keep in mind, the study was looking at closeness and interpersonal relations and how to generate that. It's not necessarily about manipulating people. All of the questions were expected to be answered honestly, with frankness, and we'll see how we go from there. Some of my students at the university may recognize some things that I do on the first day of my communication courses. I often start off with questions for discussion. I have a series of questions that I give my students. They're actually culled from several books, the If Then series as well as the Power of Questions series. These are books that are meant for games between couples or games with friends. You just take a copy of the book, you randomly open that sucker, pick a question, and you answer. The questions are often about values. There are no right or wrong answers. They're just your answers. If you answer honestly, then you have a right or correct answer. But it allows us, rather than on the first day of class having people introduce themselves as, "Hello, my name is Dave. I'm from Taichung. I'm looking for a girlfriend. I picked my nose a lot." Those kind of random introductions don't really facilitate getting to know the person. However, unlike my instructor long ago in the age of the dinosaurs, I have a sequence of questions designed to increase knowledge about who we are, both for ourselves, to understand ourselves, but also to understand others within the class. Now, one thing I do, which my instructor didn't do, is I give the folks the option to opt out. And the option to opt out is when someone picks a question, and I warn them, some of these questions are extremely personal. But what's personal to you may not be personal to me. For instance, you would be amazed. Well, maybe you wouldn't be amazed. Maybe you'd be like, yeah, sounds about right. The number of taxi drivers in Taiwan who feel a need to know how much money I make. They will ask, how much do you make? Oh, well, I make the money I make. I've got a printing press in back and a pretty good copier, lots of paper, and so I just make the money I make. No, I don't do that. But where I'm from, in the Midwest in America, you don't usually ask random strangers, literally random strangers, how much money do you make? Or other questions I've been asked over the years. When I first came to Taiwan, long, long ago, when dinosaurs walked the earth, I was young. I was half the man I am today. That's code for I was thin. And I was relatively good. I was handsome. I was Tom Cruise good looks. Not my good looks today. They were different good looks. They were real. All right, but random folks would ask me questions like, do you have a girlfriend? Well, okay, that seems reasonable. Some people might ask that. When I said no at the time, though, do you have a girlfriend? No. Why not? Why not? Soul-searching questions for the back of a taxi ride. Then eventually I did get a girlfriend, met one, she was hot, decided keep her. Actually, met one, she was hot, decided, oh God, I hope she'll stay with me. And she has. And we got married eventually, and all was good. And once I got a girlfriend, people will ask, do you have a girlfriend? Yes. Well, why aren't you married? Oh, then I got married. Are you married? Yes. Do you have children? No. Why not? Then we had a kid. Are you married? Yes. I have a beautiful wife. Do you have children? Yes, we have one beautiful daughter. Why don't you have more? No matter what, it's like boom, boom, boom. But these questions would be uncomfortable in my home country or my home state. Well, maybe some folks from Kansas would say, I wouldn't be uncomfortable with those questions. Well, I was, and it still kind of creeps me out. Some questions are more personal to you than they are to me, or to me than they are to you. So when I have my students answer these questions with each other in a group, I tell them some questions may feel too personal. If they are, just simply say, another question, please. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to say why. You just say, another question, please. And your group will immediately select another question. But here's the thing. Before anyone else answers, you need to say another one, please. If somebody else has started answering questions, you can't suddenly say, oh, that's too personal for me. No, you have to say it at the get-go. And my students tend to be okay with that. And all is happy in the world. But they may not have noticed something, and that is after they've done the exercise, they feel like they know each other better. Now, they may not be buddies and lovers and best friends, but they are indeed a little bit closer. And that's because their teacher is a sneaky guy. I want to engender a form of closeness, or at least interpersonal closeness, among my students who are going to spend an entire year together on communication and getting to know each other more intimately. And so I feel it's important to have a very strong head start. There you go. But I started doing that long before the Arons Study. The Arons Study is 1997 published. But I started that kind of activity back in 1989 because I'm old. And essentially, these kind of questions that are designed for certain topics and within certain limits can indeed engender a sense of openness and interpersonal closeness. The Arons Study developed 36 questions in 2 sections. And there are apps you can get that have the questions. Those of you who are premium members of my website, or those who for some reason purchase the audio of this webinar, you can get a copy of the questions with that. And so you can go through those 36 questions in the 2 sections. Essentially, they're designed to engender that closeness. Now, what's an example of one of these 36 questions say? Well, let's take a look at the very first question from section 1. Given the choice of anyone in the world, whom would you want as a dinner guest? It's a very mundane, blank question. But here's the thing. When my students answer questions like these, not this series, but like these, in their course, I tell them, don't just give the answer. So I shouldn't just say, Kanye West. I need to say, why? Why would you want him as a dinner guest? Because then the reasoning of why is where you really open up. I might say, Kanye West, so I can tell him to his face I don't like his music. Or I could say, Paul McCartney, because I've been a Beatles fan since I was a little kid, and I think it would be awesome. Or I could say Quintillion, because I really love the Quintillion paradigm. Or I could say Marilyn Monroe, because, well, she's Marilyn Monroe, you silly person. Or whomever. But the reason why I might choose these people as my dinner guests, that's where I start revealing value sets, information about myself that might prove helpful in engendering closeness. Or, for some of my responses, it might engender, well, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. That'd be a horrible person to be with. Question 2 in that series is another question that's very general, but it gives us an insight. Would you like to be famous? In what way? It's very general. Some folks would say, nope, don't want to be famous at all. At which point we would learn something about them, but when they tell us why, I really cherish my privacy and I don't want to think that others might be impinging upon it or that of my loved ones. Or, yep, I'd love to be famous. I want to be famous as the first nude president. And that tells us something about myself or whatever, and our value system. So those are general questions designed to give us a little bit about one another, but they're not too controversial. Now, set 2, we start getting more intimate in our knowledge. Now, set 2, we start getting less generalized and more direct, intimate about our value systems and our knowledge. For instance, the question of, if a crystal ball could tell you the truth about yourself, your life, the future, or anything else, what would you want to know? Once again, it gives us an insight into the person and their value system. Another question from that set, what is your most treasured memory? Notice we're starting to get much more direct and autobiographical. So we're getting much more information about the person and their value system. Set 3, we start moving into others. And we're once again getting a little more intimate, or actually a lot more intimate in the type of knowledge about the person. So we get direct emotional feedback. First, a little generally. Make 3 true we statements each. For instance, we are both in this room feeling. Gets to be the relationship starts building. Another question from that third, more intimate set. When did you last cry in front of another person? or by yourself. So 2 crying instances, that's very intimate, and that kind of question tends to really ramp up the intimacy set. Now in the Arons Study, they had these 36 questions, and once again you can go to my website and you can get a copy of the questions, or elsewhere on the internet it is readily available, and there's even an Android and iPhone app for you to sit down with the set. In the television series The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon and Penny take this question, and some of the questions are there. They take the quiz, and some of the questions are there so that you can see how that runs. They're not the best example of people doing this kind of test, but they're not a bad example either. But speaking of the Big Bang Theory, the next phase in the study wasn't just about the 36 questions. It's also about 4 minutes of uninterrupted eye contact. And there is a scene where at the end of their test, Penny and Sheldon sit and look into one another's eyes for 4 minutes. Now, in the test, you're supposed to just sit there and look into one another's eyes in silence. But Penny and Sheldon, of course, talk. In fact, there are YouTube videos of folks doing this sort of thing. Particularly worthwhile one is from Soul Pancake, where they took 6 couples and had them sit for 4 minutes of uninterrupted eye contact, and you can notice that many of them were chatting during the process because they're uncomfortable. And if you're familiar with my work with eye contact or the gaze, you know that starting off it can be uncomfortable. But the eyes are the window of the soul, as folks who have purchased my eye gazing or quantum erotic gaze MP3 know that it can be a very interesting thing to go through, but at first it can be very unsettling. My own hypnotic process, intended specifically for intimacy enhancement, uses the gaze for that very reason. The when 2 become 1 process has couples looking into one another's eyes while touching. Touch is also very important. The caress, the touch increases oxytocin, increases all sorts of wonderful things that enhance intimacy. And there are lots and lots of processes related to this, but essentially eye contact. There's even a group of folks who started dating events based solely on eye contact. That's right, the gaze. Looking into one another's eyes for 4 minutes without talking, and then you get to interact with folks. But eye contact is very interesting in that when done with an open heart, not a manipulative, dickish heart, but an open heart with a consenting adult partner, it can indeed be very powerful toward enhancing intimacy. And so intensified intimacy, how do you want to do that? Well, you do it this way. Boom. And there's all sorts of things you can play with for that, and all sorts of things you can play with otherwise. Now you can also practice eye contact. Yes, you can practice in a mirror if you want to have that kind of a weird effect, or there are some artistic works that play with eye contact as well, or the gaze. Many of you are familiar with my fascination with the work of Marina Ambrogovich, who's The Artist is Present. Her performance art piece, she sat for 8 hours a day for several days, and members of the public would come in and they would sit and look into one another's eyes. absolutely fascinating, absolutely wonderful work. I posted about that on my blog. You can check that out as well. Another piece that you might want to take a look at in terms of the gaze is a wonderful series of videos from TED Shots, which essentially he has a wonderful series. This is the artist Teddy Saunders, who has different events he goes to, often music festivals or alternative music festivals, called the Faces of series, where essentially he just takes portrait shots of folks. But a trick he does with his camera is to ensure that the eye level is the same. And so he does some, it's as if you're gazing into the soul of series after series of individuals. And it's absolutely a beautiful series of videos that I strongly encourage you to take a look at. But essentially, if you would like to make anyone fall in love with you, well, be the kind of person anyone would want to love. Yay! But if you want to work with scientifically validated concepts that do indeed seem to correlate very strongly with enhanced communication, enhanced closeness and intimacy, particularly in pair bondings, although it can be done in groups. My own, when two becomes one, can be done in a group of several people at one time. It's a little tricky in terms of how you manage to hold the hands, but it works out really well. But play with it, okay? I hope this has been helpful to you. You might have noticed that we've changed our schedule on our postings on our website. We're going to a schedule of at least one video every single week. We have a series of playlists, or a series of well, it's a series of series. There are a number of series that we tend to post with that we will continue contributing to. The news and rant video, as well as the questions and how to, and of course trance time. Every once in a while I'll guide you through a trance. Once a month we have a webinar, not unlike this one, although some are longer, some are shorter. Most are about an hour to an hour and a half. Some are a little shorter. Sometimes we get lots of things. This week our webinar is a little shorter because we wanted to move on and do some other stuff. So check out our website. Be sure to click subscribe on this video so you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and you can get notices when we have new videos coming up. Write comments, like our videos, share it. Let us know what you like about the videos and what you would like to see. I do this video series because I honestly want to reach you and help you. Those of you interested in the actual questions I mentioned and even of the study itself, be sure to check out the web page associated with this video. I have a post on my blog site related to that, and the link will be in the description when that's released. Okay, but most importantly for now, this is Dr. David Phillips saying, live, trance, and prosper. Bye-bye.